Short story, Red. Red is the name of this short story. The name of the author is W. Somerset Maugham. Keep in mind you spell his name very differently, M-A-U-G-H-A-M, but you pronounce it just Maugham, right? Well, I'm not going to give a long introduction here. I believe I've sent you a video with an introduction about how we are going to work with this kind of story, right? So keep in mind you have the Quizlet. Keep in mind as well, besides all the things I've told you in that other video, that our purpose here is not to get our story read. Alright? Our purpose here is not even to understand the story. Our purpose here is to expand our vocabulary and to develop our syntax reading ability, right? So the more we focus, the more we go deeper in each part of the story, the better and the more takeaway we're going to have when we finish the story, alright? So I'm telling you that because I want you to be patient with me, because I really like to be digressive, give examples, reread the parts of the story, and I just want you to know that I do that on purpose, because again, I'm worried about how much you are going to keep instead of how much we are going to advance in this story. By the way, I strongly suggest all of my students, after we finish all of that work, to re-watch the videos, reread the story by themselves, I think this is the way we have to do if we want to learn, right? We never, let's imagine I'm learning how to drive. I never look at the instructor and then say, oh, I got it. I think I know what to do, so teach me something else. We never do that. We try and then we try again and then we get it and then we go home and then we think, oh, I need some more classes, and then we try again and then we get our driver's license, but then we still have to try a little bit further. This is the kind of job we have to have when it comes to something as complex as literature. Okay, so let's dive into the story right away. So again, the name of the short story is Red. The skipper thrust his hand into one of his trouser pockets, and with difficulty, for they were not at the sides but in front, and he was a portly man, pulled out a large silver watch. Okay, so for they were not at the sides but in front and he was a portly man is like in a little parenthesis, right? So remember, his trousers, so the original sentence is, the skipper thrust his hand into one of his trousers pockets and with difficulty pulled out a large silver watch. Okay. Keep in mind that skipper is the captain of a ship, alright? When you thrust, you, for example, in that case, you put your hand with a lot of force and very suddenly, okay? I'm going to be looking at the list. I'm going to send you, I'm not going to send, but I'm going to post in the description here to give you an extra example. So take a look about thrust, right? Try to, always when I give you the examples, try to picture the thing, try to imagine, really imagine with picture. For example, can you imagine somebody thrusting a pole into the ground? Again, imagine somebody thrusting a pole into the ground. So you have a pole, you're going to thrust it into the ground. You can thrust your hand into your pocket, right? Because he was a portly man, portly, another very important word I want you to keep in mind, that is stout. Stout is like short and really strong, okay? Or, of course, fat as well, as it is in this case, okay? So, one more time, after the vocabulary. The skipper thrust his hand into one of his trouser pockets, and with difficulty, for they were not at the sides but in front, and he was a portly man. So another exercise here, try to imagine, this chubby guy trying to get something, the silver watch, out of his front pocket, and he's having difficulty because, you know, he's fat. Uh, okay, and he pulled out a large silver watch. He looked at it and then looked again at the declining sun. The Kanaka at the wheel gave him a glance, but did not speak. Okay, so I have to tell you first what a Kanaka is, right? A Kanaka is a Malaysian worker imported to Australia, historically often concentrated along the Queensland sugar coast. Well, so we're talking about a kind of people. By the way, they are the same people who later on, or depending on the point of view, populated Hawaii. Okay, so we're talking about this race. Okay, I put a picture there in Quizlet for you. So the Kanaka at the wheel, probably you're familiar with the wheel, right? But what about here? What is the wheel here? So you have the wheel of your car, or here, and then you have the wheel, or the wheel of a ship. Okay. Keep in mind that glance is to take a fast look. Okay. The skipper's eyes rested on the island they were approaching. A white line of foam marked the reef. Well, I didn't search foam on your list because, I don't know, I got distracted, but I hope you're familiar with it. Where can you get foam? You can get foam when you're taking a shower. For example, you shampoo your hair and then you're going to have a white foam on your hair. You can think about the foam of the coffee as well, mainly if you like one of those special kinds of coffee, all right? And of course you can get the foam on the shore as the waves break. Okay, so a white line of foam marked the reef. Keep in mind, so let's imagine we have the ocean going up to where you are there. Okay, here we are going to have a lagoon. Why isn't it the ocean here? Because there is a line of sand, stone, that we are going to call reef, that is going to set apart this part here that probably is going to have very calm water. This is the lagoon and the open sea. Okay, so of course the waves break here in the reef and they don't get to the lagoon where the water is very calm, right? So again, the skipper's eyes rested on the island they were approaching. A white line of foam marked the reef. He knew there was an opening large enough to get his ship through, and when they came a little nearer, he counted on seeing it. They had nearly an hour of daylight still before them. In the lagoon, the water was deep and they could anchor comfortably. The chief of the village, which he could already see among the coconut trees, was a friend of the mate's, and it would be pleasant to go ashore for the night, right? The mate came forward at that minute and the skipper turned to him. Well, ashore is on the shore, right? And mate here, be careful, because you could think about mate as, like a workmate, a classmate, and you can look at the person and say, hey there, mate, right? But that's not the mate here. In a merchant ship, you have the captain, right? Keep in mind that another way to say captain here is skipper. And you have below the captain you have the mate, all right? So that's the mate. One more thing I would like to call your attention to is this idea of he was a friend of the mates. He was a friend of the mates. It might seem strange a little, but remember, this construction is similar to he is a friend of mine, okay? He is a friend of hers, okay? Of theirs, okay? So I talked to a friend of Julia's, and she told me, and etc, 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 okay? So let me read it once more and tell me if, tell yourself if everything is okay now. This last part. He knew there was an opening large enough to get his ship through, and when they came a little nearer, he counted on seeing it. They had nearly an hour of daylight still before them. In the lagoon, the water was deep and they could anchor comfortably. The chief of the village, which he could already see among the coconut trees, was a friend of the mates, and it would be pleasant to go ashore for the night. The mate came forward at that minute, and the skipper turned to him. Okay, with the remaining minutes of this video, I would like to ask you some questions. Remember, you have two options. First, you can just answer to yourself, but please try to answer them aloud. You know, it's very important, right? Because very frequently we have this impression in our mind that we know the answer, but when we try to put them in words, it's pretty harder. Of course, the other possibility that I strongly encourage you to do so is to use our 15-minute, remember our 15 weekly minutes to answer to me. Then I can hear your production and give you a feedback, okay? So, my first question is, and remember, don't worry about getting the question right, you know? We still don't know, many options are open here, right? But in your opinion, why did the skipper look at the watch? Why is that important, you know? Because if the narrator told us, it's kind of important, right? And what are they probably going to do in the island, you know? And why do they want to spend the night ashore, you know? The next one, do you think the chief of the village is somebody that may cause, you know, people from the ship any trouble, you know? And one more, what about the 1 hour before sunset? You know, they had 1 hour of light. What do you understand by that information? Why is that information important for this part, and why is that information important for the people on the ship? Okay, so I advise you first to answer those questions and then just then go to the next video.